Yeah, but when itu ke the relevant person yang nggak consent, you will halt the record, right? Yes. All right, Prime Minister, you may start.
All right. If you want to POI, wait. Just unmute yourself. Oh, sorry. Just there's some problem with my. Okay. If you want to be just unmute yourself. My POI preference is he or him. I'm not gonna read the chat, so please POI to unmute yourself. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, let me give characterization of what's the interest of debating community, right? It's not only in order to improve someone else's debating skills and those kind of things, right? But I found 3 things in here. It is also to enhance people logical thinking and critical thinking, right? And second, it is also to give access to students or anyone to learn. Underline anyone in here, meaning everyone has a right to come into debating community. But thirdly, to give development in debating and delivering constructive arguments. First thing that you need to note that everyone not being debater because they are born to be debater, because they are used to be a novice or someone who doesn't know about debating, but simply interested in this community in order to develop their debating, right? And therefore, it is very it is a community that opens for everyone. But the problem that we are actually finding in here that most debating community is very exclusive. It's very only put in place to those who are actually having even some debating community only open place for those who are actually having probably in one of the requirements having minimum 1 year experience of debating or those kind of things, right? That's why it is very bad. And one of the problems that we already got in here is that the promotion of debating community is very very unwelcome, and it is too exclusive that that it's making it less accessible, right? So two argument under my argument, right? Sorry, before going to my arguments, I'm going to make 2 setups first. So what do we mean by proliferating to give access to massive group of people, right? So this is like giving equal access to anyone who hasn't reached them yet, like namely high school or probably student or those kind of things, or maybe even cities that like institution that has no debating community and those kind of things, right? But second, how can we do it is through socializing to institution that probably has no experience in debating. And we think that as debating community, you're not just staying in one place, but rather promote the benefits of it to a wide range of people, right? So we think that then why is it actually justified to do? We think that something exclusive, meaning it is less accessible, right? What makes a debating community is so exclusive? Because this is always being profiled as full of people with experience to begin with, right? But second, even if you want to join there as someone who doesn't have any experience, it is putting pressure from you who start from the beginning that you will be probably when you are joining in the community where you don't have any experience, where full of people all has a lot of experience, you will actually ended up being insecure, and probably you will not go into practice and those kind of things and so on and so forth, right? So why does this create less accessibility? Within that, firstly, those who are not interested in debating or simply has no awareness of critical thinking will never feel like debating community is for them, right? So they never have an attempt in order to apply for this community. But second, this is principally wrong because as a community that focus on educational stuff and soft skill, you have to show yourself as welcome as possible, right? Note that we are not obligating everyone in order to join for debating community, right? But we are more focusing on the promotion, right? In order, the moment you are promoting your community, you won't be so the moment you are promoting your community, your debating community, you won't be seen as someone who is not welcome, right? But more friendly and welcome and those kind of things, right? How can we do this? Simple. The criteria or the requirements that you need to put is that simply people who commit to learn or people who commit to develop. There is no certain criteria as minimum experience or those kind of things, which we think is very toxic, right? Why it's still better for the second argument? Why it's still better for the community to enhance it? Within that, even if they say that like, oh, this will create unfair space because it is hard for other debater who has experience with someone who don't have any debating experience at first, right? So we think that this premise, if the opposition bring in, we think that this is principle unfair for you to have that premise as an individual to begin with, right? You are having a selfish community, selfish premises. And I think that this is something that exists also in some other debaters, that they only want to practice with those who actually advance, right? So this is creating less chance and those kind of things, right? You can still practice with those who are advanced, but it doesn't mean that as a community forcing you in order to washing your brain that you can only practice with those kind of things, right? So we want to welcome as much people as possible in order to create their logical thinking and those kind of things, right? So even if the space is not full of debaters, therefore it's a community where you see different type of people coming with different ideas and learn together as a community, right? Because debating is not about individual opinion, but always as a teamwork, right? When you go to competition, you always do teamworks and those kind of things, where sometimes your friends are messing up in bringing arguments and those kind of things, and you still feel need to, okay, because this is a learning process, right? So the impact is this can teach you to not be selfish debater. So going to second challenges that probably we facing under our side, like they probably, oh, debating is very exclusive because it needs a certain language barrier. I think like debating is not only always about language. Even if you can speak English good, even if you can speak Indonesian good, it's not always that, right? But of course, like if you want to join a debating community, you need to see, is this a debating group that's specifically talking in English or those kind of things, right? So this is something that we agree. Yeah, you can put that in the requirement, because like you don't want to hurt these people by joining. You're not gonna teach them English in the beginning, from the beginning by joining them and welcome them. That's not what we mean by welcome and those kind of things, right? So the language barrier is not the thing, right? So we think that it is better for the community for one thing, right? Because like what we know that making logical proliferating logical and critical thinking is very good, because like explaining the promotion, because it is need to be equal for everyone, right? Why this is good for a community? Because like, you know, as a community who are starting probably from the beginning, who actually less access or those kind of things, you need support, right? And one of the support that you gain is when within that, as a community, the reason you get sponsorship, supports, and funding is firstly one of the most criteria is because there are many people interested in it, right? But since the promotion of it like always safe space or for debaters or those kind of things, and not only focusing on logical, even if you put this logical and critical thinking, but people are, we as a student or anyone seeing it, oh yeah, it's logical thinking, but it's only for debaters and those kind of things. So we think that it's very less accessible, it's less welcoming and those kind of things, right? So as a community, in order to make it good, you need to make a profile branding, good profile branding for your community. We think that it is very helpful. Like probably you are a debating community in a university, and probably you have more people interested in it because you are very welcome, very friendly, and those kind of things, only focusing on promoting critical thinking and those kind of things, right? Because as a debater, you're not always ended up in competition, right? You're not always ended up in competition and probably winning WUDC or those kind of things, right? You simply getting probably one of the benefits, even if you don't go to competition, you still get the soft skill, which is critical thinking and logical thinking, which can be applied to another sector, probably when you work or something, or when you apply for MUN or something of those kind of things. It is very helpful for you, and therefore we proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank
Hi, I want to check before I start. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. My pure preference is that direct POI, because I'm not going to respond any POI via chat. So please unmute yourself if you have any POI. Okay. I'm going to start my speech at 3, 2, 1. First of all, panelists, I want to deliver my rebuttal. The LO said that the more people with different background will create a problem within the community where they have a different perspective on something. But we think that different perspective is good for the debating community itself, even if it's coming from the conservative I mean, like people who support conservative party. Because why? Because sometimes we debating about stuff and it become imbalanced because we only see it from the liberal point of view, and this is not a good debate because you only see it from one side point of view, and it's not going to create the best alternative because we know in order to the point of the debate, the point of like creating a critical thinking is how to give a solutions that is mutual for everyone's, and I think it's not a problem. So yeah, I already tackled that argument. Secondly, the characterization of mass football also happening in their side of the house. If they said that, if they say that our the majority of people, the majority of people in developing country is conservative, and also like people who reject you, people who report you the moment that they heard something, that is not fit in with their principles. I think it's also become a problem in your set of the house because why? Every time as a debaters, you never feel related to anyone. You feel like you only can talk about this stuff to certain people, which is not the main point of this. Like if you have any good solutions that you get from that any solution coming from a problem happening in your country, and you got solution from the debate, because it teach you a critical thinking, you should share it with everybody else. So this kind of solution can be like can be known by all the society, and also like they have the change eventually to become an open-minded persons, to think in the in a different side of mindset. Last of all, I think like the reason why you come to join the debate community in the first place is because you want to learn. If in the middle, if somehow like you feel insecure when you see someone that is more experienced to you, and you choose to stop in the middle, means that you don't have this kind of motivations and the reason why you only come to the debate community is just because you want to get a compliment, a validation from others, which is not the kind of like people we want in the debate community. So that's not gonna become a problem. Moving on to my argument, I think like the metrics of this debate is how exactly we maintaining the quantity, that also the quality of the debate community. The government truly want the debate community to develop more, where more people are become more interested in debating community, join the community. But I understand that oppositions will say that, oh, by oppose this motion, you are more likely to increase the quality of the debate community itself. So we don't think quantity is very matter. But I'm going to prove in my argument like this would increase the quality as the debaters, not just the quantity of it. So firstly, this will create competitiveness because more people join the debate community, and the more people want to join, the more the more the competitiveness created. So you are more likely to like have the motivation to learn day by day and to develop yourself to become more good, which is very, very, very good. This is the moment where secondly, more people are interested to join the debate community because it is become more relevant, because when you talk about the topic in debate community, everybody knows about it, because we are already like trying our best to promote the debate community and how it will increase your critical thinking with the recent topic that is very very urgent to discuss, and you no longer become someone that is like talking about stuff that not everybody understand. And this is the moment where you don't necessarily have to feel insecure because you have lack of experience, because many people also have lack of experience, so you don't feel afraid to join. Lastly, because many demands debate community are likely are increasing, the incentives for the debate community are getting higher day by day. So like my Prime Minister already explained to you, like many people get sponsored the government probably will think that, oh, it is a good way. It is a good way to increase critical thinking. Debate community is a good way to increase the critical thinking. So I need to invest on this community. Compared to their side, where there's just a bunch of smart people who is good in debating, who has a good critical thinking, but it's not good enough to it's not accessible for everybody. Not everybody can have a good critical thinking. The government only care about what the majority, how the community impact the whole majority. So if they see that there is a few people that's yeah, I mean, like joining get the benefits from the debate community, they are more likely to not invest in the debating community, because they think that, oh, there is another way to develop your creative thinking anyway. Doesn't necessarily need to like through the debate community. So it is become more and more irrelevant on their side of the house, and eventually people are just like give like the bare sponsorship for the debate community, which is will eventually uh, mencegah people to the debate community itself to become better. Moving on to my second argument, I think this is would increase accessibility. Not everybody exposed with the information of like debating community is a good for your critical thinking. If only they knew that through debating community, they can be able to develop the critical thinking. Most of the time, most people who can access this are people who have money, people who can able to like pay a very expensive coach in order to get like to become better in debate community. Not everybody in developing country has that privilege, and you should actually like focusing on how to create the accessibility so everybody can able to develop the critical thinking through debating community. That's why we are very proud to propose this motion.
All right, I thank the DPM for that speech. To continue the case of opening opposition, I'd like to invite the Deputy Leader of Op.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, if you guys have any viewing, please just unmute yourself because I'm not going to be able to see the chat box. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Opening government said the debate community is too exclusive and accessible, and they made it the very main case of problem. But I think this is something that's very wrong, because simply we have open competitions, even of category or even competitions that mainly created for novice. So I think insecurity is not supposed to be a problem, because the debating community know better not to judge newbies on debate competitions, right? Also, they never explain how they can invite more people to join the debate, simply because people indeed not everyone want to join debate. And on how they talk about sponsor from government, they never give us any metrics on why the government will want to actually give more funding towards debating community, simply because we just like make people more aware, more have critical thinking is the very big check. They never have give us any mechanism, and they also never give us any clear things on how they actually wants to create this general mass education of critical thinking. Closing government are going to take the entire debate, because we're going to talk more into the principles and impact. What is actually the first purpose of the creation of debating community in Indonesia, and why this community is the best actor in status quo to fix the problematic status quo, which is the lack of education, the lack of implementation of this critical thinking that currently happening in our status quo. Right? That's supposed to be the real problem here, and how at the end of the day, CEO can also prove how we can create better inclusivity and more representation in debating community here, which is something that the whole debate never actually talks about. What is actually the direct benefit towards the debating community, and why debating community actually needs to do this in the very beginning, right? CEO going to take the entire debate. Before going there, several points of rebuttals and what makes us different compared to the whole opening opposition bench here, right? First, opening opposition can be just tackled in this debate, simply because they keep talking about people, especially minority groups of people, actually need this debating community as a safe place, as a safe space for them, right? But Judge, what you need to realize, the debating community is not, that safe space is not exclusive towards debating community. The very beginning, right? We have a lot of things that can cater towards like safe space, right? For example, it's like LPH that can be accessed by everyone, regardless if you have college educations or not, or even if you're in college, you have grown up that very much inclusive towards everyone coming from every gender, every racial, every background to the very beginning, right? I never get the explanations why at the end of the day, debating community is the only way for gay people to speak that they're gay. Meanwhile, we have a lot of like places, we have a lot of LBH, we have a lot of supportive like ormas that could support a lot of minority group of people that were beginners, right? The difference between the government side of the house and the opposition side of the house supposed to be rely on that the in opposition their case might prioritize training, that they want to create events exclusively for debaters like competitions or even webinars that talks about how to debate well. But in government it's supposed to be so much different, right? We're not going to be like opening government which do not have any clear mechanism on what they want to do, but we're still going to like we're going to make the debate community prioritize educating people through multiple formats. For example, it's like to campaign to educate the general mass on how to have good critical thinkings and how to implement it through social media contents, or even to direct field trip to schools, ormas, small unis, or internally to uni to educate non-debater friends about critical thinking to the very beginning, right? I think this is something that the whole debate actually failed to analyze, because the opening debate, basically both of them do not have any clear identity on what they want to do as a debaters, especially opening opposition do not have any clear problem that actually exclusive to be implemented in this debate to the very beginning, right? Going to my first point of arguments. Before going there, preemptive, we take the idea that maybe we're not going to have the safe space again like the opening opposition said how. But yeah, I already explained that peace actually exists elsewhere. But moreover, I think at the end of the day, the moment that we only have safe space like in echo chamber only in debating community, we believe that this safe space will never grow, which means that we're trapping a lot of discrete gay people for the rest of their life to still be gay and cannot like express their love unless they're actually like surrounded by debaters only, which of course we cannot expect that because people do not live in debating community forever to be checked. But second, maybe our debating community is not going to be as strong as like we used to be because we do not train a lot more. But at the end of the day, we can still ensure inclusivity fairly for everyone to at least join us more, and even we can actually like create more representations through this by the explanations that I'm going to provide later on to the very beginning. So I'm going to my first point of argument, how debating community is principally needs to be prioritized this proliferation of critical thinking to general mass here. I'm going to talk about what is actually the real purpose of the birth of debating community in Indonesia, right? I think I heard a lot of stories on how in 19 something like UI and UNPAD actually go overseas for the first time representing Indonesia in like international debate competitions. The moment that they come back to Indonesia, they actually like host debate competitions and things like that. And the purpose is to actually make sure that Indonesian students actually have this idea of critical thinking, not only understand, because yeah, maybe in status quo it's actually like taught to you in college, in schools, right? But it's only actually like relying towards theoretical only, right? The purpose of this birth or debating community, starting to the very begin with, is to make sure that this theory that people have can be implemented. Therefore, this is something that's supposed to be the whole debate needs to talk about. Should we stick towards this idea, this main idea of the creation or not, the very beginners, right? Yet none of the debaters, none of the team here are actually talking about that, right? So why is the current education is not effective to educate this? Simply because when you are taught about critical thinking in your schools, in college, probably you have this math or something like that, right? You're only taught about the theory on how to think, but never talk about on how it can be implemented towards like in real life, right? You're never taught on how to like criticize the government simply because the government is the one that create this to the very beginning, right? Therefore, debating community needs to actually change this. And then why then the debating community is the best actor to do this? Simply because the debating community is a more neutral body to the very beginning, right? We're privately created by someone that like that's basically not a corporate thing to the very beginning, right? And we're not also going to side with the government, right? I think this is something that's very much exclusive coming from the debating community that the whole debate never actually talk about also, right? But moreover, why the debating community is the right actor to do this? Because first, most debating community is very much privileged. You are taking the money coming from tax. That's why you can also go to NUDC freely, or even some of you can go to WUDC freely, for example, right? These contributions, even if we're not actually doing this for the government, at least you're doing it for the people that already pay tax to fund you to go into NUDC and things like that at the very beginning, right? But then, how then by ensuring this could have better debating community inclusivity and representation? First of all, the moment that you educate the people, the general mass, you're actually like giving them direct benefit, right? Because you're giving them the opportunity to stand against the government if the government is corrupt, right? The people will have the education of critical thinking that can be felt by them directly, right? The moment that the people actually have this idea that the debating community is profiting them, they will have the agency to demand the government to actually fund this community more to the very beginnings, right? Not like the opening government that say that government will just fund you guys, but here we have more agency that people will fund you. So this fund can be used for more people to join NUTC regardless of your uni or something like that. We will have more representation and inclusivity. I'm very proud to propose.
I'd like to thank the government member for that speech. To open the case of closing up, I'd like to invite the opposition member.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay. For I just through chat, and my gender pronoun is he or him. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, we think OG portrayal of problem is not inherent and exclusive in this debate. Their mainly goals in case are about fixing the image and debater communities because they claim in status quo the accessibility of people are really bad and unwelcome. 2 responses. Number 1, we think this is not necessarily true by saying regarding the accessibilities. Newbie debaters can join any other competitions and doing coaching for their first time anyway. We don't understand why it becomes a problem on this side of the house. There are novice categories that are really like free seminar, for example, there are really bunch of like online coaching and so on. Secondly, elitist that only opens minimal space, very bad. This is claim from OG. Promotion is too exclusive. We think this has happened under reason on every people because every people cannot accept you, because every people cannot accept the opinions, cannot accept the discussion that happens inside of debater community. That is why you create community to begin with, to provide safe space for people to freely voice out their opinions on liberal ideas, for example, on the Marxist ideas, and that's exactly the reason why we create a community to begin with. This also engaging to CG that they talk about moral responsibility. This is contingent on the characterization of the debater committee itself. This is the clarification, right? The debater committee don't like neglect of, don't unwelcome people because we think in the status quo that already mechanism on providing novice category, it means that we don't see that it's become the forceless and coercive for unwelcome people. That's exactly irrelevant to their kind of space. Engaging to the OO. The OO is so good at expanding the contextualization and conservative area. We think what missing from OO are 2 things. Number 1, there is a contingent on likelihood. Because firstly, who will join that debater community? And second, when it becomes likely to have successful discussion inside the debating community. And secondly, there's no process analysis how then this safe place will be created and why then it becomes so important in this debate. If CO will answer this and more inherent and more important, we win this debate. I'm going to talk 2 things. Firstly, why providing safe space is really important, and secondly, how then under CO will also achieving critical thinking, and at least it is not massive, but more likely to be happen and helping this kind of conservative people. Characterization on opposition. Before that, what providing safe space looks like to the debaters only, i.e. debating competition where we're able to provide hard motion or taboo motion. There are instill the value of progressive without intervening by providing and respecting securities and privacy. For example, asking people to be recorded or not. The people inside the debaters, even on communities, are filled by progressive people that are not biased and prejudiced, not racist, not oppressive, and so on, which means there will be discussions and that exist among the debaters only on talking about LGBTQ movement, feminist movement, and so on. Coming to the first point that I will explain and prove why providing safe space is really important. Causing opposition stance is here. We want to protect the specific actor, which are debaters that are coming from conservative area. Several reasons why it is more important to talk about. Firstly, whether the status quo on having sources to have critical thinking is already big anyway in most of developed countries. And for example, high accessibility on a seminar, social media that right now have significant and deep discussion, providing perspective and call out evil people, i.e. in USA, there is already big awareness towards protecting women in company, for example, for LGBT right movement and so on. Conclusion. It means all government case is not that urgent because how to resolve and awareness is already there anyway. The critical thinking is massively kept by most of people anyway. Secondly, several problems in the conservative area. First problem is they are unable to speak and voice out on their stances, i.e. minorities unable to speak out about their problems, they unable to resolve the conflict, unable to become more that becomes unable to deserve the right injustice in the democracy culture, for example. That is why unable to speak out and voice out. That other than that, like i.e. for example, women issue and so on. Secondly, the debaters are not all of them are already included and already like critical thinking anyway. That is why we already provide a safe space for them that already exists. Thirdly, which means under government side of the house, this is unlikely to be effective and happen, because the reason is why that happen, what will happen under this side of the house, the rejection and by most of communities will happen, i.e. religious communities, when you are discussing on the evil of religion, for example, that are made by human construct that already explained by OO anyway, impacted that to the better community and the debaters, right? Firstly, we're going to have more hatred, rejections, and this kind of debaters will being attacked. Conclusion, goals is very, very minimal to happen under government side of the house. The principle on debating communities become less important and gone, because right now you have no right and safe place anymore. It means what all you try to regard critical thinking becomes useless, because people will end up become unable to utilize your critical thinking. For the debaters, now you will attack on your personal life. You become cancelled and become excluded by your friends or your families. It's exactly what happened. Well, unlike OO, they didn't characterize to you why then the context of conservative area is that really important. CO already proved it that these people are really under oppression and able to voice out their opinions. That is why having debater community in prioritizing safe place is more inherent and important. Why then conservative countries have no space? Because the reason why to talk and discuss trapped under unprogressive rhetoric that unprogressive of feminism, LGBT rights, and minorities. Because even in conservative era, there are still a bunch of people that are progressive in Indonesia. Most of likely, this person are the person who will enter the discussion. And this person are who enter the debating community inside of conservative area. We answer that kind of questions. But secondly, why creating safe space is important? Like before, I'm going to come into the second point, because it provides safe place to these people. It helps members and communities are condemned and unable to give and voice out their opinions. More discussion that happens, like i.e. sharing experience, providing solutions. For example, there are coaching on online coaching, that personal feedback, for example, sharing on issues of women and how to resolve that in families, for example, and how resolve that in schools, for example, and this is exactly going to like happen under CO. Coming to the last explanation, how then under CO will also achieve critical thinking, at least not massive, but more likely to be happen. Second likelihood, firstly, when these debaters who are coming from conservative area that are successful, people will making them as a good example, i.e. debater from conservative area that inside, for example, in Indonesia, for example, like going to USA to become like a good consultant, professional consultant, and so on, become a successful business woman, for example. This begin as good example for the conservative people that will have the second likelihood to go do having good influences, showing to communities that are care for people, for example, feminism, protecting minorities. In a very, very worst scenario, if they cannot massively implement their skills regarding critical thinking, at least under our side, they can have two benefits. Firstly, you have safe space to have tangible medias of discussion. Secondly, at least you can implement critical thinking in your schools, families, or workplaces, i.e. women in patriarchal families will have by financial planning, teachers that are not normalizing racism to minorities in schools. These are likely because right now you have significant output by having free and safe space. Firstly, you have supporters, member who can back up and support your opinion to frame. That's important and relevant. Secondly, you have more brave personalities. Conclusion, we have two benefits. OO didn't explain this process, how then also critical thinking will exist and how we utilize it. We think this is most important because on OO tangible benefit, your benefits will be trapped and only realized upon only the small discussion inside the debating communities. On our side, we utilize it by showing societies that the debaters in Scotland are a better human being by having critical thinking. Comparative on the governments of the house, they will reject that it's conservative area because you are massively teaching people to have critical thinking to be able to showing the rejections the societies. That is why we oppose.
Right, thank you for that speech. To continue the case of closing Gulf, I'd like to invite the government whip.
Hi, let me arrange my timer first in paper. Okay, am I audible?
Yep, you are audible.
Okay. POI preference, just unmute yourself. Gender pronoun, she or her. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think the biggest responsibility that CEO never explained is that how the PD community can actually trigger social movement simply because we do not have people to do so, right? In CG, we already talked about how we can invite people to have better assessment in judging what problems existing in the society, thus we can actually trigger social movement, right? Instead of just training that happen internally in units that can be accessible by everyone, yes, it is needed. Yes, it is needed by everyone, right? One significant thing that on CG, why our case is really different from OD is the way we proliferate. It is not only like giving access and socialization about our debating community to public, but we're going to conduct webinar, campaign, content on social media, events for the general public, public so that they can understand how to thinking critically and getting information that previously can only be accessed by people that is inside the debating community, right? We're not only wanting to, but here under CG, we're not only wanting to promote our community, but we also want to develop both the society and the community, right? We're not going to force people to join debating competitions or joining right away our debating community, but they can easily basically like joining our webinar first or like follow our campaign in order for them to get the information about how to do the critical thinking or like some information, some important some some important information about critical thinking, right? I think that out of other 10 minutes to answer. Yeah, the question that haven't been answered from the very beginning of the debate is why it has to be the debating community, right? By CG coming into the debate, explaining why we're the right actor to proliferate because our fund is actually coming from the society anyway, right? Our fund is usually coming from the text, which is directly coming from the society anyway, right? That is why we have to, contributing that to the society, right? Within that, none of the other 10 minutes to answer the problem brought by CG when we throw the problem like status quo, whether people do not have the capability to have and implement critical thinking, and should or shouldn't debating community as a privileged individuals of this. Before going on into my class individual rebuttal, firstly, I think OO keep talking about how they can improve social movement, but not the social movement they created is only gonna happen in echo chamber that already aware of the problem. It is not gonna change, and secondly, it is not going to change anything, right? Moreover, social movement is also gonna be better in governance head of the house simply because we're gonna make sure people have the capacity of critically assess problems in society, right? Yes, maybe our opposition is also gonna rise, like they explained before. But what you need to understand is that it is also symmetrical in governance head, right? Because more people will also rise to support social movements because those who used to not have the capacity to assess social problem finally have the capacity to do so, right? Even if it is symmetrical, it is gonna be so much better in city, right? Because at the current status quo, we think that progressivity progress very slow. Thus, we need to push this through through program CG already explained before, right? Talking about how critical thinking is really hard for people so that we do not have to proliferate the critical thinking through our debating community. Within that first, I think because critical thinking is hard, it doesn't mean we should stop people, which we should stop ourselves to actually giving education about how to think critically, right? Because we think that what makes critical thinking hard is not because they are not capable, but they are not used to the critical thinking in daily life, right? The daily life, right? That is why we have to proliferate the critical thinking at the end. But we think that even if it is really that hard, I think the best way to spread it to people is giving the awareness about it first, right? It is not, and not like cutting down the information from debating community, which has a good source about the critical thinking at the very beginning. That is why we think that it is really good for us to focusing on proliferating the critical thinking, right? And OO always telling us what general much will be intimidated by the dino debates on SMR. We think that by proliferating it, it doesn't mean we are going to force them to go into debating championship or like doing tiger parenting like when they're training. But but it is going to be like in a form of nice educative webinar anyway, right? It means that intimidation will not happen anywhere, right? Even if they want to join the debating competitions and at the end getting intimidated, it is going to be okay because it is a part of experience that we can give to the public so that they can work under better under pressure, right? And as you talking about how it is hard for the minority people to voice out about themselves because now the debate community is not going to be have a safe place, but I think minority people can still voice out their opinion everywhere, like right, like social media exists, campaign exists, there are so many alternatives that you can do instead of like just making this safe place, right? And then within that, as debaters, you're going to, and when all CEO say that as debaters you are going to be attacked within that, critical thinking is a common thing that every country want us to have, right? So not so just because we are critical, we are not going to be attacked because we made a discourse about something, right? Even if yes, you are going to be attacked, but I think the society will still have to check and balance on how they can protect us at the end, right? And then I'm going to explain to you guys why which side of the house can improve our community better, because that is the only class that I get from this debate, right? Firstly, within that, I think my MG already told you guys that life is always about give and take, right? If we give something to the society, and the society will, of course, give us back something, right? I think on how proliferate it with the society, like previously, I already said to you that we are not like going to do the coercion, like which is the right argument or what you should is this and that, but it is like we are giving the creative content to explain so on and so forth, right? We think that the moment you are giving the society like a significant contribution, such as educate them, they're going to be more charitable for you, right? That is to say that the society will support us better. For example, like giving donations to our debating community that we can, so that we can have the resource to make large scale competitions better, right? Why? Because firstly, the society here see your community as a good community that wanting to educate and contributing back to the society. That is why they feel like, oh, we need to give something to them. They're going to be, make us they're going to see us as a good community that really want to help them, right? And it also can be like a certain charitable education NGO that look at us and have the same vision like us, and that is to educate people, and they want to collaborate and sponsor us. At the end, it will help us to develop our community even more at the end. For example, like we can giving fund to help teams that do not have the fund to join WSDC, or helping other unfortunate teams that lack of fund to join classics competitions. At the end of the day, we're going to making our community better. We're separate to
I'd like to thank the government whip for that speech. To close the case of CO as well as the entire debate, I'd like to invite the opposition whip.
Hi, I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay. My preferred gender pronoun is she or her. I through chat, please. Okay. Wait. Wrapping my timer. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. One important framing under CO, right? We say that creating very big change to the society was never the burden for the debate community in the first place. This is why government exists. This is why government has also the responsibility to try to make changes in the community, in the society, right? Therefore, we said under our side house, if we are able to prove that at least by providing this kind of safe place is really important, we said that we can win this debate, right? So two issues in this debate. First, about how this affect the debate community externally, and secondly, how this affect it internally, right? First issue, but how this affect the externally. We just said this is going to because debaters have elitist image, therefore we need to actually try to reform and try to change our image, right? Three responses. First, my first speaker, I'll explain to you that exactly because you have elitist image, it means that it'll be harder for these people, for us debater to actually want to try to reform and create this kind of critical thinking, right? Because people are going to see that, oh yeah, you're just that smart as that want to change people to think that you're actually better than them. So we said that it is more likely to want them to like reject this idea, right? But secondly, this means that on their side of the house, they still also have this kind of elitist image because they're trying to say that, oh yeah, everyone should be just like them because, for example, the people do not question enough, for example, or they do not know enough about the IR things happening, right? So we say this kind of image is still going to happen on our side, at least on our side of the house. Even if we have this kind of elitist image, for example, we don't really care, right? Not I'm sorry, I mean like we don't really affect us because under our side of the house, at least even if we don't have to, for example, engage, and for example, we still get the kind of things to benefit from this kind of debate community. But secondly, CJ said, oh yeah, it's our moral obligation because we already say like this is this community is created to try to critical think, right? Two responses. First, we said that it is not like we never attempt to try to implement critical things, right? But because we, for example, this was like when in Indonesian debate, for example, you try to make motion that is controversial, you're going to get shut down and people are going to call you out, right? But secondly, we said priority can change over time, right? We said it's okay for us to deprioritize that we want to try to make this kind of big of reform if it is actually unrealistic for us, right? What is more important under our side of the house is that, for example, we change this kind of structure that we debaters, for example, need this kind of safe place in the first place, right? We're also for example, we're only going to prioritize like creating this kind of safe place, but it's not like we're not going to attempt to try to integrate our ideas to the out there. We still put our ideas out there, but even but what is more important is we for example how the society perceive, right? But thirdly, this is for example, they want to reform the society, right? And for example, critical thinking is important. Yes, we agree that critical thinking is important, but my first speaker, I explained to you there are several reasons why this kind of safe space is very important for this kind of people, right? Because firstly, it's provides safe space, right? This is the only way for the debater to actually try to have their members or community that are confident, for example, and able to give for of opinion. Even if they say that, oh yeah, this is for there are many services that is available, we said that for example, all of the examples that you say that, oh yeah, gay people cannot can simply go out there and say, we like to emphasize this happening in conservative areas, right? So there's more likely for them to, even if they, for example, in Twitter, for example, their Twitter is going to be private and they're going to be closeted, right? They won't suddenly go to their parents and come out say, oh, hi mom, I'm gay, right? In conservative area, they're going to get slapped. But we say that this is that there's the safe place is very not accessible in this kind of conservative areas. For example, if they try to fight out liberal areas, they're going to get bashed and shut down, right? So we say even if they try to attempt to actually actively propose this, they're going to this is going to be harmful, right? So they say this is compared to their side. Sorry, they say that it's just going to be echo chamber. For example, they're not going to send the debate community. We say that at least at the time where these people need it, we give them the safe space that they need, right? Because we like to characterize this is very important for this kind of people in conservative areas, because whenever they have no other safe place to actually try to, right? That's why they go to community debate in the first place, knowing that they're able to, for example, do discussion, right? This even if they're able to force out there in Twitter, for example, there are no other people who are able to give discussion on how people with their similar mindset to do so under their side of the house, right? But CZ said, oh yeah, but even if CZ said, oh yeah, it's already progress already for critical thinking, for example, meaning that they don't need debaters to actually go teaching critical thinking to them, right? This means there are no urgency under their side of the house. But even if they say progress is less, we said that it's even harmful under their side of the house because they're going to, for example, regress the progress, right? Because firstly, these debaters are going to be seen as controlling and want to emphasize to everyone that critical thinking is very important, guys. But they, for example, don't really give understanding to do so, right? But secondly, this means that they will make people who are conservative to even, for example, who are going to oppose the debate community more, right? Because they're seen as, for example, proposing this idea that is crazy. They would like to emphasize that in conservative countries, it's very hard for them to actually try to really listen to this kind of liberal areas, right? But for the yes, POI to from CG.
A lot of debate competition actually use controversial stuff as a motion. We never called anyway, even in LGBT motion in NUDC that held by homophobic government. But moreover, if you want to educate people to implement their critical thinking because it doesn't exist in status quo, how can you actually rely on the government on that? Because they're simply biased of themselves.
Okay, so under our side of the house, you said it exactly because like this government, because they have the responsibility, the burden to actually try to educate these people, right? We say that for them to actually push for critical thinking is not because for example there are other institutions that actually want to push for critical thinking too, right? But their way is going to be more subtle because they also have this kind of conservative mindset, right? The government is also aware that critical thinking is important. This is why they create for example things that and enhance people to do critical thinking. So we say that under your side of the house, this means that if you actually these debaters who actually already seen as elitists, for example, already seen as having are oppositional to the society, who are going to try to educate them, they're not going to implement it better under our side of the house. If, for example, we make the government to actually want to do it, this means that the government they're likely to listen to the government in the first place, right? So yeah, come to the second issue, right? Why do we say that this actually so we say that by this first point we already won over OO because for we already explained to you that this is very important for us to actually create this safe space to debate and stuff, right? But second issue, then why do we say that creating and what is internal is important, right? Because this means under our side of the house we're also able to achieve critical thinking, right? Because for example, even if not massive, for example, they are also under our side, at least we ensure that these members stay within community, right? Under OG, if there, for example, a time to research, this is going to happen in two channels, right? Firstly, they try to integrate to the society, and for example, they make the community itself is uncomfortable and not become safe place. This is harmful because in that they are going to lift the movement, for example, and try to and not being able to teach more critical thinking to society, losing their member, right? So the way here is two things, right? First, look, judge. We understand that we feel they have the responsibility to contribute to society, but we say that we can also contribute in other things when the debaters develop more. But secondly, on government side, how they're putting debater in risk, and we are, for example, explain to you why we can lose both the trust from society and also from debater itself. Very proud to oppose.